Hello and welcome to the August 26th edition of Speedway Digest, Thursday Night Thunder, the most hardcore motorsports program on the internet. This is episode 217 of the series. This week, we're previewing upcoming motorsports action, reviewing past races, and chatting with our guests about Sturgis and more. Last weekend, the largest motorcycle rally in North America, indeed the world, wrapped up in Sturgis. Although the trap was large, it could have been even bigger. The Sturgis Rally saw lower than normal attendance rates this year, in part due to a nationwide commercial truck driver shortage. The driver shortage is a systemic issue that was exacerbated by the pandemic. According to a recent report from the American Trucking Association, turnover rates for drivers are about 72% for smaller carriers and about 92% for large truckload carriers, which is a significant increase and risk to the industry and the nation's supply chain. Considering Sturgis is scheduled for specific dates, many carriers do not have enough drivers to accommodate all dates and locations for pickup and delivery. Motorcyclists who live too far to ride to the event simply ship their bikes. However, a lack of proper commitment from transport companies to deliver the motorcycles to rally on time will discourage attendees from using this option. That's going to be a problem into the future as well, and we'll discuss that with our guest momentarily. Carriers that can commit to the dates will do so at a higher cost, which discourages riders from booking the transport needed to attend the event. Again, that's also going to affect later events, and we'll talk with our guest about that as well. Lubo Lazaro, Specialty Moves Manager at Montway Auto Transportation, joins us tonight to update us on the current state of affairs. Lubo has been the Specialty Moves Manager at Montway Auto Transport since March of 2020. He brings over 10 years of experience in logistics and automotive industry, previously holding positions in operations management. Lubo's expertise includes customer service management, sales, and operations. Today, we are pleased to welcome Lubo Lazaro to the program. Hello, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Again, as I stated earlier in the introduction, the Sturgis Rally can be considered an overall success, but undoubtedly the driver shortage impacted certain motorcyclists' ability to get to the event. With Oktoberfest in Daytona fast approaching, do you think that the driver shortage will affect other large motor events such as Sturgis?
Although success, the Sturgis attendance could have been much larger, and this is all due to a driver shortage across the country. This may also affect the attendance in upcoming events, as mentioned in the Oktoberfest and Daytona Bike Week. This is all due to an increase of transit times to be able to transport these motorcycles to the event and back.
How does the driver shortage affect the nation's overall supply chain? I've noticed there's been some shortages in supermarkets and stuff like that.
That's correct. The driver shortage is causing small and large companies to consolidate routes, which in turn is increasing transit times, as well as costs of shippings across the board. The more carriers need to consolidate routes due to drivers not being able to accommodate, the larger the transit time in turn becomes.
How does this shortage affect automotive and motorcycle transport?
Just as any other aspect of the shipping industry, the automobile and motorcycle transportation have been affected by the driver shortage again in both transit times due to consolidation of routes and costs associated with the shipments. For small and large asset-based companies, driver attrition and retention is their number one priority right now. This is causing, of course, an increase in compensation to hire and retain drivers, which in turn, again, is cause an increase of higher shipping costs.
Is the shortage pressuring carriers to consolidate routes and schedules?
I apologize, you were breaking up for a second. I did not understand that.
Okay. Is the shortage pressuring carriers to consolidate their schedules and their routes to a certain extent?
Yes, of course, that's correct. Carriers are forced to consolidate not so popular routes in order to accommodate the common routes and be able to consolidate their businesses better. This creates a longer transit time across the shipments, especially for not so common routes being used. In this turn, the smaller independent carriers have come to the rescue to help out as much as they can as well and take these not so common traveled routes out there. But with those actually comes a higher cost as well. A smaller carrier operates at a larger cost.
And in the long term, what is the best solution to the driver shortage?
Uh, I don't have all the answers to those to that question, but there has been multiple ideas, even going into the government of hopefully increasing or decreasing actually the age of having the capacity of people starting to become truck drivers. Currently, the legal age to become a truck driver is 21. There's been some talks in Senate to actually change that to be able to get a CDL license to operate a commercial vehicle as early or as young as 18 years old, but nothing has come into effect. This is one of the things that will potentially help this shortage of drivers out there.
Well, hopefully that happens. I know there's been the pandemic has definitely put a focus on that sort of thing, and hopefully it improves in the future because it definitely can't keep going the way it is right now.
Correct. I agree.
Well, I'd like to thank you once again for coming on the program tonight. I know it's been an issue that we're going to be talking about in this country for a long time to come, and hopefully it's something that works itself out with government regulation and also with the changing of the world economy.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again. Have a nice evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Once again, that was Lubo Lazaro, who had took a little bit of time out of his busy schedule to come on the program with us this evening. There is a definite problem with the drivers in commercial trucks and that sort of thing, and we can notice that especially across the entire supply chain, both in supplies to grocery stores and to other stores, as well as transportation of automobiles and motorcycles. Now, hopefully, that's the sort of thing that as I stated, that works itself out in the short term. But there's no really easy answers to that question. As he stated, the smaller transportation companies, such as the Montway Auto Transportation, has taken some of the strain off of larger companies, but that is not the only answer. The answer is definitely for changes in the company and for changes in the entire government as well. Hopefully that thing happens. Again, we're very happy to have him on the program tonight, and it was a great time talking with him for a few moments. Are you a race car driver, crew chief, pit member, track owner? Maybe you're just a huge fan of the sport. Contact us to get your spot on the show. After all, it's every 15 minutes of fame, and we'd love to hear from you. Again, most of our interviews last about 10 to 15 minutes. That one just lasted for about 5, but it really depends on how much stuff we want to share with the audience, how much stuff the guest wants to share, and how much interest the certain topic has for the audience at large. Now, what we're working on right now are a bunch of different interviews for the future. We've got a possible interview with an Olympic gold medalist for the Olympic movement that's going on this year in Tokyo. So that'll be awesome to get to talk to him if we're able to work that detail out. He would be on in about 3 weeks. Now, we also have other people in the pipeline for future guests. Next week, we're going to be talking to a monster truck driver who drives in the Hot Wheels series. We'll be at least talking to one driver. We're hoping to get 2 on the program. The Hot Wheels series is an amazing series. It's been featured on various TV programs in the past, especially on MAV TV. This year, they've got 10 different events on their schedule, and I'm hoping to make it out to one of those, although their schedule does not really have any events in the Southeast that I can see. But we'll be talking a little bit more about that schedule next week. I will go ahead and run the entire schedule through on the program before we talk to the drivers. But I'm hoping to make it out to at least one monster truck event this year, whether it's the Hot Wheels series or the Monster Jam series. Pandemic has had a huge impact on monster truck events. There was the one Monster Jam event that we talked about in this program where we had a few different drivers on. The Hot Wheels series has been off for a long time now, but they are planning on returning in full force and events, as I stated. That'll be cool to see those. What's your favorite monster truck of all time? Mine, of course, is probably Gravedigger, but I've always liked Bigfoot too. It's pretty cool. Let me know in both the comment section for this show as well as on the comments on the page, the Speedway Digest Thursday Night Thunder page on Facebook. There's a lot of racing news going on this past week. One of the things we have to mention, of course, is the death of Robin Miller, the longtime racing correspondent who worked for the Indianapolis Star. He also worked for Speed. Lately, he's been doing work for Racer Magazine as well as coverage of IndyCar. So that was kind of sad that he passed away. It's not unexpected, not entirely unexpected, but he did make it to the Indianapolis race a couple of weeks ago, and that's great that he died. At least he died knowing that he'd been to at least one event in the past few weeks. That is unfortunate, though, and we wish his family and all of his fans all across the spectrum good wishes. Moving on from that, there's a bunch of news going on in the world of sports car racing. This past weekend was the 24 Hours of Le Mans. A bunch of different highlights that I've worked on for Speedway Digest in the racing news section about Le Mans. So be sure to check that out. It appeared to be a pretty good race. I did not get to see much of it because it was, to be honest, it was difficult to find coverage of that. The Motor Trend did have coverage on their channel on satellite and cable. Although I do not get the Motor Trend channel, I did find a couple streams of the thing on YouTube, and I did watch a little bit of highlights later on. I also watched some videos from people like Jordan Taylor and that sort of thing. So pretty cool. Seemed like an interesting race. There was a bunch of news came out about that. Some IMSA related news. The fact that the International Motorsports Association will be getting an increased amount of spots in Le Mans starting next season. There's also the fact that the LMDHs and the LMHs are both going to be basically worldwide race cars, which is kind of an interesting thing, and that will increase the amount of overlap between the WEC, the ACO, and IMSA. So that'll be cool to see how that goes. Again, that won't really have much effect next year, but in 2023, especially at Daytona, that'll be an interesting event to be sure. And I'm hoping to make it out there, and I'm going to be there next year at Daytona. We already have our tickets. We already have the hotel, and we're all set for a great weekend of racing there at the Daytona International Speedway in January of 2022. Again, we're hoping that 2023 is just as awesome, if not more so, with the increased participation of other countries. What I'd like to see, and which you never know is going to happen, is I'd love to see SMP racing back at the Daytona International Speedway for the Rolex 24 Daytona. Now, SMP Racing does have an amazing new car that they've just rolled out. You can check that out on the SMP Racing page on Facebook. That's where I've been following it. Mikhail Aleshin has done a lot of work with the SMP Racing people over the years. And he's been posting a lot of information about their new car, their new prototype. So be sure to check that out on SMP Racing on Facebook. Now, of course, that is primarily a Russian language page, but there is a good amount of English information on that page as well. So be sure to check that out. This next weekend will be the race in Daytona. The NASCAR Series regular season schedule wraps up. I did do an article about that on SpeedwayDigest.com. Check that out in the NASCAR Cup Series section. That was not entirely my article, to be perfectly honest. It is a sponsored piece, but it does bring up a lot of interesting information about the last race of the regular season there at Daytona, and how some of the point things will work themselves out. As I stated in a comment that I made about that article to someone who emailed me, what you have to understand about the NASCAR point system, sometimes it seems like you need a degree in imaginary mathematics to try and figure it out. But it is a pretty cool little thing there in Daytona this year. I don't really like the fact that they moved the race to late August. I think the July 4th date was entrenched in the history of NASCAR, and moving the race to the final race of the regular season is awesome, but it's not necessarily the best thing for the sport. I understand the reason why they did it. Part of the reason why they did is that the July 4th date had increasingly became a rain-out date for the event there. There is also a strong chance that it could be rained out for this weekend. If you watched any of the information about the weather forecast, it's not exactly the best. It's pretty much a summer weather pattern that we're in here in Florida. Afternoon thunderstorms are fairly common. Morning storms are fairly common. It's be interesting to see how they work that out. The last time I went to the July 4th race there, it was rained out, and we ended up going the next day. In fact, the last time I went to a race at Daytona, went to the road course race for the truck series. It was delayed by rain. Now, I'm not saying there's a huge rain cloud over the Daytona National Speedway, but history does show that there has been for several years. And it's not exactly a good thing. But there's nothing you can do about the weather. They try and reschedule it, and the weather chases them down. So we'll see how that goes. Moving on to other racing news, of course, everybody's probably seen by now the rumors about Palm Beach International Raceway being sold are probably true, which is unfortunate. According to the Palm Beach Post this morning, there are 2 suitors for the property there at Palm Beach International Raceway. The track is doing fairly well, but it can make a lot more money if it's sold. That is the nature of the sport. That's kind of part of the reason why I brought this show online originally, was to try and bring more people into motorsports, to try and increase the popularity of local tracks and national tracks as well. Unfortunately, Palm Beach International Raceway has always had large and amazing plans for the future. The future never shows up, though, at that track, and that's just not good. There have been some really, really great races out there. If you look at in the past, going back several years now, they had an ARCA race there, which is the American Race Car Association. It was attended by Chase Elliott, who competed in the race. Allie Owens competed in the race. Allie Owens, who was one of the most underrated female drivers of her time. I'm actually hoping to get to meet Allie Owens sometime in the next year or so. I did have a plan to head out to Daytona and meet her there at her current position, where she works at the Wyndham Ocean Walk Resort there in Daytona. At this point, I might end up doing that in January. Not really entirely sure. But she has been a past guest on this program, which is awesome. But she was out there as well. It was a great race in ARCA. We got to see, of course, Frank Kimmel was there at that time. So it was a pretty cool race. The weather, again, another weather-related delay there at Palm Beach International as well, with the ARCA race. And I think that's probably the reason why I never returned, because it was raining like crazy. Even a big race fan like myself and my father, we left early because it was just too much rain. Just too much. But hopefully, at some point in the future, maybe they'll bring something like that back down here again. I know they went to Homestead a few years ago, the ARCA race. Hopefully they return to Homestead again in the future. I know if Palm Beach International does end up selling, which it probably will, at least as I see it now, there will be a big hole in the motorsports world in South Florida, and that's unfortunate. That is the nature of the sport. It's the nature of how things go lately. And again, that's part of the reason why I decided to start this show several years back. Now, that's not saying that there's anything wrong with motorsports in general, but everybody knows there is. Everybody knows that they've got issues in motorsports that are bigger than this show. They're bigger than any sanctioning body, and they're bigger than most of us. So the pandemic hasn't helped at all. It did increase the amount of people coming into the sport when they were able to watch it at home, but it just didn't work out as well as I think they hoped. A lot of that goes back to the fact that speed disappeared several years ago, and when that happened, the racing went to all different sorts of places, and it makes it more difficult for casual race fans to see what's going on. And if you're interested in the sport, you'll find it. You'll find racing on no matter what platform you're looking for, whether you find it on the internet, whether you find it on a channel, whether you find it on MAV TV or on NBC Sports or Fox Sports or anything like that. I think this year, of course, NBC Sports is going away. Excuse me. Fox Sports has made a lot of changes in the past year as well. So it's kind of an interesting time for motorsports in general, and hopefully it gets better. Again, it's kind of a sad thing to hear that Palm Beach International may not be around for much longer. It's been there for almost 50 years. Actually, it's been there longer than 50 years now. So it's sad. It's just sad. I've had some great memories there at Palm Beach International Raceway. I did a ride along in a pro stock car out there. Got to hang out for the IHRA event when it was the big deal there a few years ago. Courtesy of A.D. Alonso, another person who's helped out with the show a lot in the past. So we've had the past track president on this year. We had him talking about the race there in Nashville. So that was cool. Barry. So, and there's a lot of great things happening on Palm Beach International, and it's not good that it's going away. But well, those are things, and we'll move on from there, shall we? I also wrote a good article this weekend. I posted it about the SVRA series, which unfortunately is not going to be coming down to South Florida. It's going to be racing in Sebring at least. I don't know if I'll be able to make it up there for that event, but that's kind of cool. I've got a bunch of different races going on. Sports Car Vintage Racing Association. Hopefully they get back to me about the information I wanted to know about the SVRA. I wanted to know about whether they're going to bring a race down to Homestead sometime in the future, that sort of thing. Again, I mentioned the Biketoberfest coming up. I'm going to try and do a little bit more motorcycle stories. If you've been a follower of the racing news section there in Speedway Digest, you've noticed in the past couple of years, I've increased the amount of motorcycle stories we've had online. A lot of that due to people like Michael Mullally, who seemed interested in that. Like Mullally Capello, the former co-host of this program, who I'm trying to get back on the program every so often. Another thing I want to talk to is Dakota. Have Dakota back on the show again. Hoping to have him back on in maybe a week or so. It really depends. I know he's got an SRO race coming up this weekend, so hopefully he does really well there, and we can see how that goes. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for turning in tonight. I know it's not exactly the most exciting show, but talking about talking about trucking and the transportation industry is important, especially in our current pandemic world. And we're very happy that Lubo Lazaro was able to take time out of his incredibly busy schedule to come on the show this evening. With that, be sure to check out past episodes of Thursday Night Thunder as well as the other shows on the Speedway Digest Radio Network at speedwaydigest.podbean.com. You can also check out the show on Facebook by searching for Speedway Digest Thursday Night Thunder in the search bar. Or you can go directly, facebook.com/SD Thursday Night Thunder. I also invite you to the articles covering all aspects of motorsports at speedwaydigest.com. In addition, if you're a fan of South Florida and who isn't, be sure to check out the latest news and information about our slice of paradise at Favorplum's Fantastic Finds. It can be found on Facebook, Twitter, and by heading to http://Favorplum's Fantastic Finds. That's FABORPLUMBS fantasticfinds.wordpress.com. To find me on Twitter, you need to go to Favorplums. That's FABORPLUMBS, where I post all the stories we write for Speedway Digest, as well as the stories for Favorplum's Fantastic Finds. Or you can go to @PBHappening. That is pretty much exclusively Favorplum's Fantastic Finds, travel, and local attractions news on that particular Facebook page. Although I do a little bit of stuff regarding other events. For those of you who are interested, we're going to be going out to Halloween Horror Nights in a couple weeks, and I'm going to go ahead and be covering that. A lot of information on Favorplum's Fantastic Finds. You can probably also find it at Favorplums and at PB Happening if you're interested in learning more about that. I've got an article on the event that comes out tomorrow, in fact, on Halloween Horror Nights. And I've got some other information in the hopper there. I did make a comment on Twitter today, which went kind of viral. A lot of people seem to have liked it. I'm talking about the Halloween Horror Nights Fair. So be sure to check that out on twitter.com/Favorplum. FABORPLUMBS. Once again, we'd like to thank you for listening and look forward to seeing you again next week in the Thunderdome as we discuss the major issues in the world of modern auto racing. Next week, as I stated, we're going to have some monster truck drivers, and it should be pretty awesome to talk to them. Hopefully, we'll get a couple other people on the show as well, and we'll have a great, huge, happy show for you. Thank you for listening, and have a great night.